So just quick intro. This is IGDA Albany Microtalks. It's just like very short talks from people in our local community. We are starting off with Jamey Stevenson, and take it away with your talk.
Hey, let's check. Hey everyone. My name is Jamey Stevenson. I'm a game designer, educator, and nonprofit organizer. I'm also the director of Tech Valley Game Space, a community of local game makers, and a member of the Social Justice Artist Collective. So I want to talk to you about protest games. I create free browser games inspired by a wide variety of topics, ranging from the personal to the political. I've made games about gentrification, the glass ceiling, managing anxiety, the challenges of building resilient communities, and participating in awful political debates that can only be won by shouting the loudest. I've also created a number of games inspired by the history and culture of the capital region. These range from a series of interconnected web poems to a goofy game about obeying Uncle Sam, to a game where players clean out the apartments of evicted tenants in a retro-futuristic version of Troy. This string of local history games began life in 2015 with an event that Tech Valley Game Space organized called the Local History Game Jam. The event brought game makers together over a weekend to create projects inspired by local history, culminating in a showcase where the games were projected on the outside of the Art Center in Troy. Going back a little bit in time, just around the corner from the Art Center, used to be Troy City Hall before it was demolished.
I'm just gonna interrupt for a second. Are your slides working? Because it's still stuck on the first one.
Okay.
Or did you have slides?
I do have slides. Yeah, maybe it's the speaker note thing. It's not working the way I hoped it would, because I've only seen the notes. Oh, notes. Silly notes. Thanks for the heads up. Let me do a little experiment. Apologies. I usually don't use notes, so most of it. Okay, if I switch from one to the other, do you see it?
Yeah, no, it's working.
Okay, thanks. All right. Well, what shall I do here? I'll just go show
I
things.
had I had my notes on like a Google Doc, and then I'm just gonna like read it off my phone. I don't know if you wrote it in Google Docs.
Oh, that's fine. I have it. I have it here, and I can see it now. I was just wondering if I should start over for the recording, or if I should press on.
It's your choice. Like, it's all recording, so.
Okay. Let me just go through the beginning part again. I'm really sorry for the folks who are here. Okay. Hello again, everyone. My name is Jamey Stevenson. I'm a game designer, educator, and nonprofit organizer. Also the director of Tech Valley Game Space, a community of local game makers, and a member of the Social Justice Artist Collective. Tonight, I want to talk to you about protest games. I create free browser games inspired by a wide variety of topics, ranging from the personal to the political. I've made games about gentrification, the glass ceiling, managing anxiety, the challenges of building resilient communities, and participating in awful political debates that can only be won by shouting the loudest. I've also created a number of games inspired by the history and culture of the capital region. These range from a series of interconnected web poems to a goofy game about obeying Uncle Sam, to a game where players clean out the apartments of evicted tenants in a retro-futuristic version of Troy. This string of local history games began life in 2015 with an event that Tech Valley Game Space organized called the Local History Game Jam. The event brought game makers together over a weekend to create projects inspired by local history, culminating in a showcase where the games were projected onto the outside of the Arts Center downtown Troy. Going back in time from the local history protests in 2015 to 2008, I was living in Troy, and some of you may remember this event where the city of Troy actually shut down an art exhibition at the Sanctuary for Independent Media, which was artist Wafa Bilal showcasing a modded version of Shooter, which he had just done a swap of. So instead of killing the usual types of folks who you were killing in these games at the time, instead you were fighting George W. Bush. And City of Troy and Robert Murch in particular shut down the Sanctuary for Independent Media on kind of trumped up reasons of supposedly it not being up to code and not being safe to have people in there. And Robert Murch was pretty notorious for doing this in the city at the time, sort of selective enforcement of building codes for political purposes against his political opponents and just people he didn't like. So there was a big protest outside of City Hall in Troy, including lots of local game developers and others, in support of games as protected free speech and games as art. So it was when I was thinking about protest games, it's a moment that I often go back to. And it was particularly ironic because we were protesting in front of Troy City Hall after this exhibition had been shut down, supposedly because the Sanctuary for Independent Media was an unsafe building. Meanwhile, Troy City Hall, folks may know, is now demolished. Since then, it's been completely torn down because even at the time, it was a very unsafe building that was crumbling. So anyway, I don't think you can craft better sort of political metaphors sometimes than reality gives you. So that was some of my own background with games and political games, protest games. But it's not the only type of thing that I do, and obviously it's been a long time since 2008 or 2015. But my thoughts turned to this topic again a while back during some recent interactions with Ben Chang. Many of you know, the director of RPI's Game Simulation Arts and Sciences degree program. He had shared a link to this New York Times article about the most influential works of American protest art since World War II. And along with the article, Ben also posed a question. What would be the nearest equivalent to these works in the medium of video games? So I racked my brain. I tried to think of some examples beyond the one that I'd previously shared. And some things came to mind. So one example is the story many of you, I'm sure, know about Warren Robinette working for Atari at the time when they had a ban on creators having any credits in the games they worked on because they were worried other companies would, try to recruit their employees. So they said, no, you can't have any credit on your work. And Warren Robinette famously created this secret room within Adventure with a very flashy credit sequence. So that is certainly an act of protest that, I think an early example of some like labor-related protest from a game programmer that was interesting. Maybe that's one example. Here's another one of my favorites. If any of you have ever heard of the activist group The Yes Men or Jacques Servine, Jacques was a programmer on Simcopter for Maxis, and they had included these sort of bikini-clad women in the game, and as a subversive act, Jacques, built these bikini men, right? Why not have some more kind of parody there? And he had programmed them to appear only on certain dates. So he programmed them to appear on his birthday and I think Friday the 13th as well. But due to a bug, they ended up appearing much more frequently. And this is pretty much the most well-known and well-remembered feature of this game to this day. And after the fact, so Maxis ended up firing Jacques over this inclusion. This was put in, without anybody else's knowledge. And Jacques has given various explanations afterwards for the reasoning for doing this. So he had described one other employee as quote unquote aggressively heterosexual on the team. And he said that person was responsible for these sort of bikini-clad women, so he wanted to counteract that. But he also has said that honestly, the working conditions on the project were horrendous, and there was lots of unpaid overtime and crunch. And he didn't necessarily say that that was his reason for doing this, but he did say if he felt happier in the job and it felt like, he and his fellow employees were treated better, then he would have been less inclined to risk it, right? So anyway, last thing that I want to share about Simcopter, and it's a great info about this that you can look up. I recommend it. It's a great story. This is just a quote from, this may or may not be accurate. This comes from the Wikipedia page, but it was too good a quote not to share. This is describing the bikini men. And the claim is, quote, their fluorescent nipples were drawn with a special rendering mode, usually reserved for fog-piercing runway landing lights. So, fun fact for you there. So those were a couple examples that came to mind, but they're examples of sort of subversive acts, I would say, acts of protest by creators of commercial games, where they kind of snuck these things into the games they were working on. But what about games that actually protest, wider issues as well, kind of more outward facing? Not that the previous examples didn't, but so one example that immediately springs to mind there is the work of Molly Industria, a developer whose games attempt to reappropriate the medium and use it to address deeper topics. Their work even includes games that are made to be played at a protest. So there you go, right? Case closed, protest games. But what about some less obvious examples? I love this definition of play provided by Salin and Zimmerman in their book Rules of Play. I think you could replace the word play with the word protest, and the quote would still ring true. I believe that rebellion is the essence of play, and this makes video games a promising medium for protest art. Salin and Zimmerman also go on to describe a particular type of play, which they describe as transformative play, where the free movement of play alters the structure within which it takes place, which has a lot in common with the goals of protest. But how can we foster this type of play? And what do games do well? Well, I think a lot of us know as game creators, right? Games are interactive systems, and they allow us to explore systemic issues through play. A great example of this can be seen in Parable of the Polygons, an essay about building diverse communities that mixes text explanations with interactive simulations. This combo allows readers to better comprehend the factors that can lead to undesirable outcomes. Games can be fun, and fun can be a powerful rhetorical tool. Thoughts and Prayers is a free browser game that can be completed in just a few minutes and allows players to see the impact that their thoughts and prayers have on the ongoing epidemic of gun violence and mass shootings. Spoiler alert, not a whole lot. Games let us inhabit characters and walk in their shoes. In the case of A Woman Goes to a Private Games Industry Party, designer Rosa Carbo Mascarell invites players to take a walk in her own shoes and experience the various forms of harassment that she regularly encounters at such events. Games let us try out new roles and experience new challenges. In Papers, Please, players take on the role of a border checkpoint agent who must balance the needs of their own family with the challenges of enforcing xenophobic immigration policies and navigating an increasingly Byzantine set of rules. Games can help us to process our own feelings and share them with others. In Dysphoria, Ananthropy presents a series of short autobiographical vignettes that allow players to better understand some of the struggles associated with Anna's experiences with gender dysphoria and hormone replacement therapy. Games can tackle serious topics and themes. The accessibility of authoring tools like Twine and Bitsy has empowered a diverse range of creators to enter the landscape of games and interactive fiction. Porpentine's Howling Dogs is one of many examples demonstrating how this new wave of creators is using interactive media to address heavy topics. Games can be abstract and metaphorical. They can utilize a wide variety of multimedia forms to craft interactive metaphors. In To My Firstborn Son, Stephen Lavelle creates an expressionistic landscape that expertly combines written text and 3D environments to communicate a powerful message about generational misogyny. Games let us enact and practice cultural values and ideas. During the New Games movement of the 70s and 80s, designers intentionally created games that incorporated countercultural values like cooperation and mutual aid. By playing these new games, participants could discover different ways of interacting with one another. Games can provide community for isolated people. Kind Words is a game that encourages players to open up about difficult feelings and experiences, and provides an interface for other players to respond with support, sympathy, advice, or even just acknowledgement. The game helped many people to feel less alone during the pandemic and since, and it continues to do so today. Games can facilitate positive social interactions. Where Should We Begin by Esther Peel demonstrates how games can go beyond simple icebreakers and foster deeper, more meaningful connections between players. Through such interactions, we can strengthen our relationships with others and grow our protest movements 2 people at a time. And I had mentioned the local history game jam, but I just wanted to mention one other event that Tech Valley Game Space organized last year called Pixels for Progress. The idea here, which came from local educator and game developer Sarah Lauser, was to create a game jam focused on bringing together artists, coders, and game makers with activists and community organizers to explore the intersection of games, art, social justice, and political activism. And our first and to date only Pixels for Progress Jam was a lot of fun. We want to thank everybody who participated and created games. And I'm really passionate about trying to continue this effort to see if we can organize more of these events to bring folks in our world of game development together with the broader community to collaborate, particularly with activists. So if that's something that you're also interested and passionate about, I would love to speak with you about it. Last thing I wanted to say, since protest is all about taking action, I wanted to conclude with a little call to action. So this was something that we asked people to fill out at the Protest Games workshop and in some events leading up to it, where we wanted to encourage everyone to consider how you can use games to support a cause or organization that you care about. So I would love to hear your thoughts if you end up doing that. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank everyone at the IGDA Albany chapter for having me. Thanks.
Hey, thank you. I was leaving, I did leave some time if people want to do like a quick Q&A, but if no one has any questions.
Yeah,
I guess I have a thought. I think outside of just the actual games themselves, you know, another form of protest through games is just the types of games that people choose to play.
Mhm.
Can almost be their own form of protest against
Yes.
cultural ideas or just things can get political with just the games people choose to play in general.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm curious, Ethan, did you have any examples that spring to mind for you?
It's hard to think of like a specific one, but there's definitely sort of this battle culture war between, um, I guess, more woke uh, games and more, I guess, conservative. I could say, games that are more traditional in their representations.
Mhm.
I think people can get up in arms about that, and I think that affects how people view the games and what they choose to play. Is this larger culture war that's formed, and it's a form of protest.
Yeah. Well, I certainly um, know that a lot of us have lived through many years of those culture wars from all sides, and certainly from the game developer side, particularly marginalized creators, right? Been harassed and targeted campaigns and all kinds of other things beyond just
Yeah,
people uh, not supporting their work in other ways. But yeah, I think there's lots of examples of people sort of voting with their wallet, to use a cheesy term. Very
yeah.
cheesy. But yeah, uh, sure. I just shared, since somebody was asking, thanks, Ethan. I shared a link to the slides, and I think I just set them so anyone can view them. But let me know if you have any trouble.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Ethan, would you be ready to do your talk?
Yeah, I can go.
All right, awesome. Let me make sure there's nothing I gotta do. Okay. Whenever you're ready, just start.
Can everybody see?
Yep.
Pull up my notes. When we find our dreams, we declare them loudly, announcing them proudly to the rest of the world, the rest of the waking world. We write them out in crayon and pass them around our classrooms. We lose our dreams. We take them out early in the morning when no one else is awake. A nice quiet forest. We let them wander off, never be seen again. The deeper the dream, the quieter and more harmless a death it experiences. It's scary for me when I tell people what I plan to do with my life, especially when I failed again and again in the past to keep promises. The more I see the track being laid ahead of me, the dimmer that inner child becomes inside of me. The child who rose to the challenge of building games. Games are wonderful, terrifying, cutting edge, somber, explosive blood carnage circuses that no one in their right mind should dare to make. They are essentially a psychotic juggling showcase, the modern day iteration of man's quest to splash paints together and see what colors harmonize. 3D modeling, rigging, materials, animation, level design, systems design, programming, algorithms, math, data structures, acting, user interface, design patterns, Foley, user experience, focus testing directed beneath trillion-dollar corporate acquisitions and mergers that bust unions and keep salaries low. Good luck. So please let your dream die. That is the lesson of life, and you may as well learn it now while you have your dignity and your sanity. Go outside when the dew drips off the rain gutters and find a quiet forest. But there's a problem. I can't follow my own advice. I can't let my dream die. I wish I could, but I can't. There's this game I'm currently working on, Copper. Like all lengthy game projects, it's a nightmare, which will expose every insecurity you thought you never had. The doubts, the fear, the voices, the time sunk into the bedrock of the idea. I can't even bear to tell you how long I've been working on it, or the reasons it's not already finished, but I'll spare you the details because it's not really important. I recently had a double jaw surgery. It was one of the hardest things I've done in my admittedly privileged life. I had time to think, really think, as I lay recovering, inebriated by painkillers, and Netflix reality shows. I saw friends around me settling into lives that probably suited them, occupations that would feed them economically from the jump of their 20s. They were doing things I could do, and they were seemingly happy. But I couldn't stop thinking about that boulder I had pushed nearly up a mountain. Copper. This sobering headache, one that I had birthed. And maybe it's not even about the actual game in front of me that drives me. I mean, it's really not that good. It's quite bad in aspects, but ultimately it's the thing I set out to do, right? I am making a video game. And when I'm not raging, I'm having a fantastic time making it. And I think I made this sort of unspoken promise to myself a long time ago. I think I made it in the darkness of the night when 12-year-old me, up till the wee hours of the morning, explored the world of Skyrim for the first time. And the 16-year-old me was brought to tears by Joel and Ellie's journey in The Last of Us. When the 14-year-old me got a kick of serotonin every time a new issue of Game Informer landed in my rusting tin mailbox. When the 18-year-old me ravenously studied GDC talks and obscure game design articles. And when 21-year-old me, now sitting here talking to all of you, decided to not give up on copper. The promise I made was to be a part of that. All of it. A part of shaping these worlds, these characters, these engaging, elegant game systems that I adored. I've got a month to finish Copper, and this talk will act as the starting gun to the final stretch of a 2-year-long project. There are many things that can kill a dream. Shame, guilt, or just being plain tired. So please, let your dreams die. Find that quiet forest when the dew drips from the rain gutters, and cut the leash. Because if this life is meant for you, no amount of neglect can truly kill it. That dream will eventually long for the warmth of home. It will need to return from whence it came, and it will come knocking, slamming on the door. Let me back in. So let your dreams die. Give it a go. For if they are real, they will rebirth themselves, rising from ash to slap you in the face and remind you of your purpose. Thank you. There's the Steam page if you want to wish list it. And it'll be coming out November 22nd. You can see more of my work on my website, ethanhansen.net, my YouTube channel, Adventures in Game Development, and my Twitch. So, yeah. Talk.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, definitely. Do you have like a link to the thing you can post in chat to the game?
Yeah, I'll send a link to the Steam page.
Yeah, it was a very, very good talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let me double check. I think I'm the only. I'm the final talk. But give me 1 second, because I need to figure out how this setup's going to work with also me recording. Start slideshow, presenter. All right. Can everyone see this?
Yep.
All right. All right, let me just make sure this setup's working on all screens. Okay, cool. All right, I'll just get into it then. Hi, I'm Jax, Ceceri, they, them pronouns. I was the creative director of this VR horror puzzle game, Hello Crew World. For the talk today, I'm just going to be hyper focusing. This is kind of like a longer talk I've been building that this part I'm just hyper focusing on horror elements that we were putting into the game, since I felt like it was October and that was probably like a pretty good topic to cover. So Hello Crew World was a VR horror puzzle game. It was developed and published by my company Occupara Games. It was actually our first published in-house title, like internal to our team, because Occupara is like an indie game publisher, but we've had like internal, like I've been on their internal teams for about like 4 years now. For Hello Crew World, we had about like 10 to 12, a core team of 10 to 12 devs that were kind of like going in and out, just based on where we were in the project. The story was heavily focusing on transgender and cyberpunk themes. That's something I'm definitely like want to talk about in the future, but I think it's definitely one that like just is way more expansive than like the talks we were giving today. So look forward to that, I guess. And it was released in August 2024, so about 2 months old now. Here, I'm going to see if this works. This is our launch trailer, which will give like a pretty good idea of just the like basic overview of the game. Let me know if audio's coming through.
There is something I wish to ask of you. This facility was abandoned long, long ago. Could you come down to where I am? I have been down here for so very long. Please do. I will be ready. Don't you worry, okay? I'm right here. My sweet.
Oh god, I forgot it. I think it's the MetaQuest YouTube channel I pulled. I wasn't expecting that jump scare. The Quest 2 jump scare. So Hello Crew World is primarily a physics puzzle game. Like the main mechanic of it is players have to power up locked doors by placing connections from generators to receivers. There's like a bunch of different methods and mechanics. Like as you start out in the game, we have these you saw like the pylon tripod things that like the player was picking up and throwing around. Later on, you get like a handgun that just shoots like energy orbs. So I'll kind of cover. Oh, hang on. There we go. There we go. Okay. The YouTube video did not play well with those controls. So kind of just covering like why we did what we did, which kind of helps like as a primer for like a lot of stuff I'm talking about later on. We chose VR just simply because we secured a funding deal for it. Not really much to say about that. We went with horror because a lot of Occupara has like a background in horror. There's been a couple times like we've worked on horror projects. It's just like a very strong interest, like, you know, most of the people at the company have. There is also like a strong market interest, which helps too, but you know, it's stuff that we've all worked in before and we're pretty comfortable working with that kind of like genre. We went with puzzle, and I'm gonna like get into it a little bit more in later slides, but having Hello Crew World be a puzzle game let us have the world be a more like static experience that the player can go through at their own pace. Just VR is like a very, I have slides, I'll go into it deeper, but like VR turned out to be like a very challenging like medium to work in, just because like there's a lot of things that like you're not able to lean on as easily coming from like traditional like standard flat screen games kind of a thing. But puzzle kind of works better for that because, it's not like as opposed to like, combat or something, or, like Resident Evil or like Amnesia where it's more evasion kind of thing. It just lets people like kind of work through it at their own pace. And the trans themes, just because I wanted to, we have like a very strong like trans queer makeup at Occupara. Like Sina Breyer is the lead writer and voice actress for Alice, who was the like computer lady talking in the trailer. But as someone I like, she's a trans woman, and like we both like worked really closely together, like kind of just make a very strong just trans theme throughout the game. But so that's kind of like why we did what we did. The project restrictions we had, there's two major points with VR that, like I said, it kind of challenged us to like how we designed and built out the game. The biggest thing I emphasized a lot was VR is such a different medium than traditional games. The first like major point is you are unable to control the player camera. Like most games are very like they're very, if you're doing like a more cinematic game, it's a lot of like cinematic just means like basically you are controlling like the presentation of the game, but the way we had to end up designing Hello Crew World was more like a theme park ride where we can't like, the camera is the player's head, so like, we can't literally like grab the player and like force them to look in a direction. Like that is like a just major no-no in VR space. So, we kind of had to build the game where we're just like making very attractive like points of interest, just like try to draw like players' attention, or a lot of the time we just like locked them in a room and just like had Alice or some other prompt that says like you have to interact with this thing to like progress. The other major like challenge was player movement is one-to-one with their physical ability. Very early on we were talking about like combat and evasion mechanics, like you see in standard horror games, but one of the things that became very clear was that player movement, the player has to react and move within like their actual physical like reaction time in real world. Like if you well, just showing the VR headset, but like my perfect example was like you have to think about like if a like over here is my bathroom, and like if a zombie came out of my bathroom and I'm standing here like facing the screen here, you have to think about like it's not just like a twitch movement where you can hit like Q or something, it's like turn around. It's like I have to like physically, with all this like hardware on, physically move my body and kind of like turn around and see the creature or whatever approaching. And with that, it kind of there's definitely like a lot of paths we could have taken to like figure that out. But one of the things was it became clear early on we had to go like all or nothing with like evasion and combat, because it just would have to be such a huge part of the player movement. And in the end it just was like we're doing a puzzle game. If the combat is not like a major component of like the puzzles or whatever, then just in the end it was like it just was easier to like ditch all that stuff. Getting to like limited budget means tighter focus. We had a very, very tight timeline to make the game. Like the complete alpha like alpha playthrough from like start to finish, complete experience came together in about like 6 months from scratch. I to this day I don't know how we did that. Like, it just was like a lot of work from everyone on the team, and we somehow like made that happen. But there's a bunch of things we did in order to like help mitigate that. One of the things I did was mandate that gameplay had to be very modular and dynamic. Going with like is talking about like we're using like these pylons, and we have to we have the main mechanic of generators and receivers, and it pretty much was like pretty easy for us to like just come up with new mechanics that kind of just like inserted themselves like between that chain. Like there's multiple things of like we have special pylons that change like the power level of like the lightning coming from the generator. So it kind of, but the thing with that is that it made it very easy to like just take that stuff out of like, oh, this mechanic is not working, we could remove it, and then it's not like we have to rework like entire sections of the game. We just have to like rethink puzzles and kind of just like place like new objects in there. Bespoke scenes had to be highly impactful, so like anything that was not like just part of like a modular like creation kit had to be like just very very memorable. There's a handful of scenes in the game that like kind of have this, like at the beginning of the game where you're walking through the Crab and Grab, which is like the restaurant the player like starts out in at the start of the game. That was like a very bespoke scene that like we put like a lot of time and effort to like make sure it looked like really good. And then the part we'll start getting to now, for the horror, is focus was on gameplay, not flashy horror elements. So what that kind of meant was that then like a lot of our art resources, audio, just assets, like all resources were being heavily weighted towards making the gameplay feel good and making the gameplay like fun, which took away from horror elements, just because like a lot of that stuff is very, so to speak, like expensive to make. Just like if you're doing like creatures, if you're doing just starting with like, if you just make like a creature, then that has to have its own audio, it has to have like animation, you have to figure out game design of like how does the player interact with this creature, how does it fit into level design, do you build levels around this kind of stuff. So we were doing like gameplay puzzles first, and then trying to find like different ways to build up the horror and tension without like having to do like these big expensive like set pieces or animations and stuff like that. There we go. So one of the huge things we did was did a huge focus on environment and audio. A VR advantage is that players are deeply immersed in the world from like the get-go. So allowed, like, basically you're in the headset, and like you don't have to do that much to convince the player like they're actually like walking around like in this physical space. So that allowed us to focus like much more on the world and ambience instead of entities. Is this video gonna work? So this is one of the very first like iterations of the proof of concept. This is just working with like the first like generator receiver mechanic, and just like in a dark room with like some audio that our sound designer like put together. So let's see if this. forgot this video. uh, I forgot that it ended with me clipping through the ceiling because we were still figuring out VR movement and physics. If you... come on, why did this... There we go. Wait, is this back? Are we back? Okay, I think it reset my slide, but that's fine. So, but yeah, anyway, like, in the previous video, like, you know, we were having, like, you know, producers and, like, managers kind of, like, just run through, like, the proof of concept, and people are already, like, getting freaked out, just, like, you know, putting on the headset and just being in a incredibly densely dark environment with, like, just weird whispering in your ear and weird electronics and stuff happening. And that proved to, like, kind of just be really effective, like, throughout the game of, like, just kind of playing with, like, you know, how we did lighting, how we did, like, audio and music and stuff like that. So this is a few, like, screenshot examples of, like, areas of the game. This is, like, the grab and grab from the start of the game where the player, like, is investigating this thing, and then in the basement they fall down this, like, hole where they end up in, like, the rest of, like, the laboratory facilities. See ya, Chloe. So, like, you know, this is, like, a very good start of the game where we had a lot of players, like, already get, like, kind of creeped out just, like, walking through this, like, highly realistic, like, environment with, like, very low lighting. These are this is, like, from level 1 where it's starting to, like, feel... I have a whole, like, spiel, I will say, in a later talk about, like, how we use, like, kind of liminal spaces in these facilities. Like, these are supposed to be, like, these sprawling, like, underground tunnels. Excuse me. So it's... you know, it's not like a traditional, like, back rooms kind of, like, liminal space, but just, like, a very, like, this is, like, clearly artificial, but just, like, this should not kind of be here kind of thing. Like, it's just, like, very malicious, very, like, kind of intentful of, like, how these, like, spaces are built out. But this is kind of a thing of, like, you know, it's these very, like, kind of claustrophobic, very... you know, it's playing a lot with, like, lighting, it's playing a lot with, like, claustrophobia. You know, you kind of are in a lot of, like, these tight corners that you have to, like, walk down, like, in a physical space, and you're not really sure, like, what's around each corner. This is, like, my favorite area. This is, we have this whole cell block section where, you know, not to get into the plot too much, but, like, you know, people were being, like, captured and being experimented on by the, like, researchers, scientists in this facility. This is, like, a very perfect example of, like, it's just a literal, like, maze of cell doors and, like, repeated assets that, like, you know, you see this, like, these, like, lights here are the, like, exit elevator that you're trying to get to. This is a part of the game where you get, like, sent down to, like, the lowest level of the facility. This is, like, a very good section of, like, you know, it's just walking through these, like, this surreal environment with, like, you know, just noises and things happening all around you. This is from a level past that, where it's just another example of, like, you know, just very long, sprawling, you know, hallways where, you know, there's just, like, the doors, so you don't know, like, what's behind each one. So that's going to get into our spider bots, which are our main entities of the game. This was something our art director came up with in, like, a pretty ingenious concept. They're basically just, like, spider... like, in lore, it's kind of just, like, these objects in the facility get infected with, like, this kind of cybernetic, like, virus thing where they kind of turn into these weird little, like, bug creatures. They just, like, pop out of, like, random objects in the world. Their design was pretty perfect because it's this really good, like, mixture of they're not like that threatening, but like if you still, these are like if you see like a barrel like life size in front of you suddenly sprout legs and start like walking past you, like it's still like alarming, which is like the perfect like horror comfort level that we're trying to like go for. So we designed them like kind of just more as like pests than like a danger to the player. My methodology for a lot of their behavior is kind of like, you're walking around, like it's kind of like you're just disturbing like a nest of raccoons more than things of like, you don't want to like interact with them, but like, it's the kind of, it's that kind of perfect thing of like, you don't want to have like them like all just suddenly jump up and start like running towards you, even though like they might just like try and be getting away from you. There's a lot of like, it was good to see a lot of like YouTubers and stuff get like scared playing, like seeing them pop up. This is a like example of like how we used them. This is from level 2 where there's actually like 4 spider bots like dormant in this office, and there's like a trigger that the player's like constantly like walking back and forth in, with like a random chance of like one of them spawning. So like you kind of see here like these blue lines are like the paths that each spider bot like can take. One of the things like that was fun about this, like designing this, is like you can set like you kind of see the animations like still a little bit awkward in some areas, but the way we kind of got around that was setting like the triggers far enough away where the player like might not see some of the awkward animations, but you see like you just hear a thing happen. There's like a little noise that happens when the creature like activates, and there's like little footsteps they have happen. So it's the kind of thing where it gets your attention, but you won't like immediately like see it right away. And a counter to that also, or I guess like an end cap to that also, was having to make sure that when a spider bot like actually got up and became active, since we didn't have like AI for them, we had to make sure they always like ran off into a hole or ran off like just basically like run away around a corner where the player like couldn't see them like despawn, pretty much. So just constantly like having like little like weird critters like just underfoot, like basically. It was like this was definitely like a very fun like little section to work on. We use like procedural animations since we didn't have like access to animators for most of the project. We just went with like just there's a lot of like spider like movement tutorials on Unity. So yeah. So we just like, it kind of made this like natural like unsettling movement. Our designer Olivia made a very robust tool set that let us like control their behavior and movement paths. You kind of see like this GIF down here, like it's just a lot of like control we had over them for how they like activated and deactivated and stuff. Allowed us to like quickly create a lot of encounters, which was good. Because like that was just something where in the last like few weeks of the game I basically was like running through and just like peppering in like just swapping out like in a garbage can or something with like one of these guys, and just setting up a trigger for the player to like see him. And to kind of like end the thing here, because I'm going a little longer than I thought, these are some unused concepts that we had from the game. Most of these were done like pretty early on, but reason we didn't use most of these is just coming down to like budget to incorporate them. Like this one was a physical form for Alice that we're thinking, we were trying to like work in a boss fight at one point, but again, that's getting to like combat and mechanics that like just became like too expensive to try and like investigate and like spend time on. These are also spider bot limbs that we got modeled but didn't end up like finding a real way to like make them work. It kind of got like a little close, like this was like much later on in the game that we created these, but it kind of then ended up feeling more like became like more combat stuff. It's the kind of thing where it's like we didn't want the player to like see a creature with like a buzzsaw like chasing after them and then not have like the actual like physical ability to like run away quickly from them, because like in our game we just move at like a pretty slow pace for the most part. This was also kind of a similar vein. This was our Zomborg, which these were like modeled out. This is actually like a prototype from our art director. They kind of did not fit into the story and like how we wanted to tell it, unfortunately. But the main reason we kind of got rid of them just was because they're very like complex creatures, and we weren't entirely sure how to integrate them into the game without like this is definitely a thing where it's like the player, it's life size to the player kind of a thing, and we were not entirely sure like how to integrate them without like some kind of like again either evasion or combat mechanic, and we're also like not entirely sure like what they even would do to the player, since we didn't have like any death states at this point. But it's still like a very just like we got this concept out there, and it's like this is pretty cool. So all right, so thank you for letting me blather about this game. If you have any questions, I'll post this up also, but you can find me at like my social media here. So all right, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, James. And thank you, Jamey and Ethan, as well.
Yeah, thanks to everyone who submitted talks. It seemed like it seemed like people were also telling us like people who were not able to make it tonight were interested in like doing this again. I did note in Discord. I'm not entirely sure when we're going to have like the time in our schedule to do one, because we're kind of like holidays are coming up, which makes it hard to like do events, and then we also have a global game jam in January, so there's a lot of prep we have to do for that. But it definitely seems like people want to do more of these, so it's definitely like a thing we'll do in the future. Yeah.
I just had a question.
Yeah.
So, what was the motivation behind creating a, as you said, a comfortable horror experience? Like, why not go and try and make the scariest thing you can?
I like a lot of the answers just like the budget we had. Like the first concept doc I submitted to like our production manager. We actually had like this like basically Five Nights at Freddy's kind of cast of characters of like, oh, there's going to be like 6 guys like running around and you have to like evade all these things, and then that was like they had to sit down with me and say like, hey, how much like this is going to be like AI budget, this is going to be like animation budget, there's a lot of stuff of like just our timeline like was not able to like support like having that like it's I guess it's like kind of just like budget limitations was like a huge part of it, and like for the most part like we were trying to be like very risk averse with this project, because like this is our Occuparo's like first in-house project, and there's just like a lot of stuff where it's like the focus just kind of had to be like we're learning how to make a game more than like we're trying to do like the perfect game I guess we want to do. Like there's a lot of elements in this that I wish, like the boss fight I mentioned, like I really wish we were able to get that in there, but that turned into like that's going to be like 6 months of work, and we had like 6 months to like make the entire game kind of thing. So it's just a lot of like just balances with that. Like I'm pretty happy with the level we had, but it definitely like it introduced to like a lot of challenges of like just trying to figure out like how much we could like push our assets and trying to also be very conscious of like not pushing the team a lot for like trying to get like animation, art, all that stuff out there. So
Is that why you lean toward puzzle design? Because I imagine puzzles are kind of more of a static system.
yeah, that's a huge part of it. Mostly because like puzzles are like they're kind of just there and let the player like kind of just walk around and kind of interact with it at their own pace.
Yeah.
So it's just like with VR, it's also trickier. Like if this was like not VR, I think there's a lot more we could have done. But with it being VR, like the primary thing is like trying not to like rush the player, I guess, a little bit, or just figure out like what's a comfortable pace for the player. Because it's the kind of thing where it's like we don't want to be like, okay, we're going to spend like 4 months like building out this one level, and then it's a level that takes like 30 seconds or something for the player to walk through, kind of thing. Or not not that long, but like it's just like a lot of like checks and balances for like trying to make sure the players like just moving through at like their own pace a little bit. But just kind of like made it like easier to like just design the game around without having to like worry about like just dynamic elements, I guess.
Yeah.
Jordan had a comment. Seems difficult to get. Cool talk. VR is super interesting, but seems difficult to get into. Difficult to get audience with fewer headsets out there. Yeah, that's 100% the experience like we had. Like there are about, I think I looked it up, and there's about like there's 150, 160 million users on Steam, and I think about like 2.5 or 3 million of those might be running VR headsets. And like I kind of like this is a thing of like we got full funding for this game, which I think is like the only scenario in which like this would have like actually worked, because like it's just such a very limited like it's just very hard to get the word out there, because like 3 million people sounds like a lot, but then like that's worldwide, and then it like Hello Crew World's like very niche of a niche kind of game of like it's already like a single player like it's a VR experience, which reduces it a lot. It's a single player experience, which reduces it within like that subset, and then you're talking about like it's puzzle, like horror is like pretty open in VR, but like puzzle games are like not everyone's like cup of tea, and just all even like just does the play like do puzzle players even like this kind of genre, or what we're doing kind of thing. So it was definitely like we had the privilege of like not having to worry about that, and like if we were worrying about money or having like basically we were worrying about like the money like this was going to make, like I think this would have been a much different project. But we were just like very fortunate we were able to like kind of just do like whatever we wanted, which I don't know. Also, hi Aaron. I was just saying Aaron's the programmer, one of the programmers on Hello Crew World, because I was inviting the team to like kind of check things out. So hello.
Hello.
Did anyone have any other questions? I think we could probably call it there at this point.
And one last question.
Yeah.
That game you had worked on a while ago, Time-Based Panic. Did any lessons from that game apply to this time?
Yeah, so that's a deep cut a little bit. Play Maze Panic was a game jam game I made with Occupara. I think actually like a month after I started working there, so like 4 years ago. That was there's a lot I kind of learned from that very quickly, just with like scoping projects carefully, because that's like about like a 5 minute experience, and we kind of like were running out the clock for like just trying to get into like everything we got into that game was like just running out the clock, and there was a lot more to that design document that I like had. But one of the things I took away from that was the level design. I don't know if you played it, but so that's a game. I can post it later, but that was like a game where you're like a kid going through McDonald's like a play place thing, and there's like this burger monster chasing you. And one of the things that like I did with the level design there was make sure that like all the tubes you're crawling into, like if you can keep going in like any direction, and you'll always end up in like the safe zone. Like they all kind of like wind, and like there's a bunch of like crisscrossing and intersections and stuff, but like it's pretty easy to like get away from the monster once you kind of figure out the game design. There's a lot. I took a bunch of that from like playing a ton of Resident Evil 2 remake, where they have like a very similar like level design methodology there of like you're getting chased by the tyrant creature throughout most of that game in the police station, but then there's like always like there's always a safe room, and then there's always like a way to like circumnavigate the creature, and because you can't kill it, but like you can get away from it pretty easily. And that was something that was like something I took like going into it, into Hello Crew World, because I was still trying to push like combat for like a lot in like the first few months, but over time it just kind of became like over time it just like we just kind of had to like make it way more linear, and then like it didn't really matter about the linearity, because like we didn't have like anything chasing the player. You actually can see this if you play the first level in level 1 of Hello Crew World, like after you like exit the Crab and Grab. The level design there is like kind of like our first prototype of it, where that's like a level where there's like a central area, and then there's a bunch of puzzles like around, like in the tunnels around it, and that was like one where you're supposed to like weave your way through like a bunch of different areas trying to get away from like a possible creature, but then we didn't end up like adding that creature, so it's just like weird leftover game design in there, but the level like still kind of worked, so. All right, but I guess we can call it there though, because I'm getting a little sleepy at this point. But yeah, thanks for Ethan and Jamey for giving your talks. And yeah, I will get these uploaded hopefully like by this weekend. But I'll definitely like I'll ping the two of you about like what stuff you want in your videos, because I'll probably make like a one long like just uncut just like raw edit of this, and then just like cut everyone's like talks into like sub videos so you can share them easier on your social platforms and stuff. So but yeah, thanks everyone for your talks and for coming and listening, and have a good night and good weekend. So,
Good
Thank you
night.
all.
bye.
Bye.
Thanks.